Hello, you lovely ladies and gentlemen, my name is Mengs, and today I welcome you guys back to another episode of Unit Analysis, the series where we review units from the Advanced Wars, wrong game, Advanced Wars games in great detail. And today we're checking out the Fighter. A lot of you guys wanted to know more about the Fighter in the comment section of the previous episode, and so today we're checking out this anti-air aircraft unit. So yeah, the Fighter. As I said, it's an anti-air unit. It's probably one of the best anti-air units in the game. It is extremely specialized. It can only attack air units, but it is extremely good at what it does. It's going to cost you quite a bit if you want to build one. It's built from the airport and it costs 20,000. So it's a heavy investment, costs almost as much as a Neo tank. However, it is an investment well worth it if your opponent is floating a lot of dangerous air units, like a bomber, for example. The Fighter is more often a response unit. It's not a unit you're going to open up with. It is more often than not a response to a bomber because it is incredibly good at countering the bomber. It is both cheaper and it deals with it extremely effectively. But the Fighter is also a very good unit to build if your opponent has a lot of battlecopters because, again, it can deal with those units extremely well as well. So, the Fighter, it has a movement of 9, the most out of any unit in the game. There are no other units that can compare to the movement speed of the Fighter. I mean, just look at how big of an area it covers on the screen. I mean, it is absolutely ridiculous. The amount of distance that a Fighter can cover in a single turn is incredible. They can dart across the map, and that makes them a very good response unit, because of course, once you need some kind of response to an aerial attack, you need a unit that can move quickly and be where you want it to be. Like, compared to a missile, for example, who needs several days to set up, the Fighter, once you build it, usually the day afterwards, it is right where you want it to be, which makes it a fantastic unit to build in response to any threats. In terms of its vision in Fog of War, it has a vision of 2, not fantastic, but not great either. It's not really a good scout. If you want to scout, then I would much rather suggest you build a battlecopter instead. They have a vision range of 3, which is a lot better. They're not as fast as the Fighter, but again, the Fighter isn't a unit you fly around scouting things with. It is a unit you build to respond to an air threat. Now, the Fighter has a pretty good supply of fuel and ammo. It can go a very long while without being resupplied. It has 99 fuel and 9 shots. However, being a Fighter, it burns 5 fuel per turn. So if it runs out of fuel at the start of a turn, it will crash and you will lose it. So you have to be careful about that. And even though it has 99 fuel, it will run out of fuel pretty quickly if you move it around a lot, because since it moves 9 tiles per turn, that essentially means it burns 9 fuel per turn. Now, if you play Eagle, he burns a little bit less, but only on a day-to-day basis. He will burn 3 fuel per day instead of 5 because of his day-to-day power. Now, I am playing as Eagle here, but as always, I have those powers disabled, so his day-to-day bonuses do not apply. Now, at the end of this video, I'm going to show you a funny little trick that you can use to burn less fuel on your Fighter. It's a little bit of an exploit, so you may not want to use it in multiplayer battles unless you want to be accused of cheating, but it is a funny little glitch that you can pull off if you want to be a little bit savvy. I'll show that at the end of this video. One thing that you have to note about the Fighter, especially in PvP battles, is that it makes a very distinct sound when it moves. So if you hear this sound, you know that it's either a Fighter or a bomber. This is a weakness depending on what kind of mode you're playing. If you're playing against your friend and you're playing sort of like a hot seat where both of you either play on the emulator or you pass a Game Boy Advance back and forth, then you might want to turn the sound off while you play, so your opponent won't hear the very distinct. If you're playing Fog of War against the AI or anything like that, you can always hear a Fighter coming, which makes it significantly less stealthy in a way. If you're playing on a site like Advanced Wars by Web, this won't be an issue because that site doesn't have sound, at least not yet. But if they ever add it, I would imagine that would actually decrease the viability of the Fighter in Fog of War because you can actually hear it approach. So this is just a little thing to note, especially when you play against Eagle in the campaign. You can always hear how many fighters/bombers he has. You don't know which one he has, but you can hear them. So I know for a fact that in one of my streams against Ponsegraf, when we played against each other, I built a Fighter, and he sat next to me, and he heard the very distinct, and he was like, "Oh, you have a Fighter," and I was like, "Oh, that's so annoying." And then he built an anti-air right away. So it's like, that part of it is incredibly annoying, but hey, that's just how the game is. Anyway, let's take a look at how the fighter performs against other air units, shall we? Obviously, it is pretty amazing at shooting down any aircraft. It does 100% base damage to transport copters. If they have a slight defense boost, like against Eagle, you won't be able to do this. But this is normally an engagement which has no RNG elements to it. Same thing against the battlecopters, deals 100% damage against them, will always shoot them down no matter what you roll on your luck damage. Against other fighters in a mirror matchup, the fighter does 55% damage, which is kind of the standard number that applies to most mirror matchups. There are some differences, but 55 is usually what a unit will deal to itself. So this means that you have a chance of dealing either 5 HP of damage or 6 HP of damage. Here we dealt 5. So it's a little bit of a coin flip whether or not you bring them down to 4 HP or 5 HP. And then they have a coin flip on their counterattack. So it's a little bit RNG, but generally speaking, the attacking side will win. But you can be kind of unlucky sometimes and deal less damage. It kind of depends on what you roll, which is a little bit annoying. However, against the Bomber, the fighter also deals 100% damage. And as I said, the Bomber is primarily the unit you will build the fighter in response against. In most matches, what will happen is your opponent will build a Bomber, or you will build a Bomber, and then the other side responds with a fighter, and then the other side responds with a fighter to count that fighter, and then the other side builds another fighter to counter that fighter, and on it goes, especially in like high-income matches. Once one side builds these units, then that's going to be the focus of the battle most of the time. It's just going to be fighter, 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 fighter. So that can kind of like spiral out of control pretty damn quickly. Now, taking a look at the fighter's defenses, if it happens to get caught out in the open by an anti-air, it does take 65% damage, so either 6 or 7 HP vanishes, like here. So you definitely don't want an anti-air to attack your fighter. That would be very bad. However, if you put your fighter in range of an anti-air, at least outside of Fog of War, you're probably doing something wrong and you need to rethink your move. Against a missile, as we covered in the first episode, the missiles one-shot the fighter, so again, don't put your fighter in range of missiles. That's a very bad idea. Of course, in Fog of War, you gotta be wary of enemy forests, or forests where there might be missiles, so just be careful about that. And if you happen to get caught out in the open by a cruiser, it takes slightly less damage. The cruiser deals 55% damage to the fighter, so not fantastic, but not great for you either. So the fighter has some durability on it. It won't completely melt to most anti-air units, and a 4 HP fighter can still do a decent amount of damage to enemy aircraft, so it's not like this fighter is completely unusable. However, there is something that the fighter can do that makes it kinda decent. So, being an air unit that can only be targeted by a certain amount of units, the fighter can be used to block off other land units. It's a very expensive roadblock, but it can do so. So, if you find yourself in a position where you desperately need to block some enemy units from passing through a certain area of the map, you can use fighters for this. I mean, as I said, it's the world's most expensive roadblock, but it works, because for some reason, units in Advanced Wars have not figured out that they can simply go underneath aircraft. So, but it is something to keep in mind. You know, if you have a fighters around and they don't have anything to do at the moment, or maybe they're not in range of air units, use them to block. Like, put a fighter in front of your expensive units to prevent other units from coming in and attacking them. It is a very viable strategy if you happen to have fighters lying around. They might as well do that job as well. Now, another thing that the fighter can do, similar to the missile, is if you can somehow get it in range of an enemy airport, you can use the fighter to lock down the airport, either by placing the fighter on top of the airport, or you can just have the fighter in range of the airport so that whatever units comes out of it will be targeted. Now, of course, they can build a fighter of their own, and if you attack their fighter, they'll be repaired next turn, so the match will kind of be even depending on the RNG, but they can't build battlecopters or transport copters or bombers at the very least. Of course, they can put an anti-air next to their airport. That's a way of zoning the fighter out. So it is not as good as the missile in this regard. But it is something you can do since the fighter is so mobile. You can place it on the edge of an airport, and now you have basically locked that airport down unless they get an anti-air or maybe a missile to ward your fighter away. So something you can definitely keep in mind. So, now we come to the part where I'm going to be showing you a very funny exploit. So, this fighter is out of fuel. I don't really know why. I just wanted to show that you can resupply it with an APC. But there is actually a very funny exploit that you can pull off to burn significantly less fuel on the fighter. This isn't actually beholden to the fighter alone. This is something you can do with every single unit in the game. However, I would say most units don't really get much out of it. The fighter, since this moves so far, is the only unit that really benefits from this exploit. And this exploit is not something that I came up with on my own. This was taught to me by Ephraim225. He made a video about it, 10 facts about Advanced Wars. I'll link it in the video description since that's where I got it from. So this is something you can do in Advanced Wars 1, Advanced Wars 2, and I do believe Dual Strike. I'm not sure about Days of Ruin. So basically how you activate this glitch is you move all the way to the side, or alternatively all the way up. You move in a straight line. But right before the final move, you go down. However, what you have to do is you have to press both direction keys at the same time and then press A on the same frame. So you need to do ba-ba-bum. You need to do it super fast. I don't know if I can pull it off, so I'm going to do a save state just so I can load in case I mess up. But first I'm going to show you guys just how much fuel I burn regularly. So if I just make this move, you can see that the fighter burns 9 units of fuel because it moves 9, so it's pretty simple. However, if I'm able to do it super fast, I might not be able to do this on my first try because you need to be super quick for this. I was not able to do it. I gotta be even faster. So, again, I gotta do this super fast. There you go. I was able to do it. See that? 97 out of 99 fuel. So instead of burning 9 units of fuel, I only burned 2. Now, why this is, I cannot explain. It has something to do with how the game calculates distance. I don't know enough about the game, technically speaking, to know why this glitch occurs. Again, you can go watch Ephraim's video on this if you want a more in-depth explanation, but this is something you can do in matches if you're very fast, and I don't know, you just want to flex your glitching skills, I guess. I don't really think this is something that would win you the game, but yeah, you can do it with every single unit. I mean, technically speaking, if you have like a recon, you could also do the same thing, although recons don't really tend to struggle with fuel as much. You can do it with bombers, I guess, but again, bombers and fighters, they have 99 fuel, so it's not like they're going to... I'm actually unsure about the bombers, I think they do. But yeah, I don't know, it's just a fun little glitch that I wanted to show off in the series because, hey, it's a nice little trivia thing. But yeah, fighters, do you guys like them? I like them. I think they're a great unit. They're very costly, obviously, but I think they're a good investment. I think that they're a good example of a very specialized unit that does its job very well. Obviously very expensive, like it's not like you can afford to build them in our matches, but I do think that as long as there are bombers around, there will be a reason to build fighters, because bombers are very strong units, especially in high economy matches. They're very expensive, but they also hard counter a lot of important units on the ground, so having a unit that can counter the bomber is very important. And of course, if your opponent happens to spam a lot of battlecopters, the fighter can be pretty good as well, even though it needs to shoot down over 2 battlecopters just to earn itself in. But yeah, no, I think that the fighter is a fantastic unit. If it is to be like buffed in any way, I guess they could reduce its price. But if they're gonna do that, they also have to reduce the price of the bomber. I don't think that statistically the fighter should change in any way. I think it's perfect just the way it is. It's fast, it's effective, it does a lot of damage. It is pretty much everything you want a specialized unit to be. Anyway, guys, let me know what you thought about this series, what you think about fighters, and let me also know what kind of unit you would like me to review in the next episode of Unit Analysis. Give this episode a like and a comment, and I will see you guys next time. Bye-bye.